Have you ever stopped to think about how deeply a society's past political choices can really lock in its present, like shaping its future in ways that might be totally different from what anyone originally intended? We're talking about those really big, weighty decisions that can, define a people's destiny, sometimes for generations. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really close look at a critical discussion centered on the path of Tigray.
Well,
And it's framed by this very potent question, unity or division. Our source material for this deep dive is, well, it's a truly thought-provoking internal document. It's titled Tigray's Path, Unity or Division.
Indeed. And this piece, it's not just commentary, is it? It offers a very specific internal viewpoint. It's giving a critical look at Tigray's recent history and making quite a strong appeal for a really different future. So our mission today really is to unpack this viewpoint. We want to highlight its core arguments, look at its critique of past actions, and explore the alternative vision it proposes for the people of Tigray.
Exactly. And just to be clear, this isn't about us taking sides in what's obviously a very complex situation.
Not at all.
It's about understanding a powerful, maybe often unheard voice from within this critical conversation. And it opens on the line that just, wow, it really grabs your attention, challenges things right away. The state of Tigray is not established by hating Ethiopia alone. That immediately pushes back against a pretty strong narrative, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yeah. What's fascinating there is how it challenges the foundation of an identity or even a state. It suggests that building your group identity or your political entity mainly on enmity or opposition to someone else, well, that's just not a sustainable path or a productive one. It's a fundamental call to reevaluate your principles. And, we actually see this pattern elsewhere throughout history. Societies defining themselves purely by who they're against. They often struggle to find lasting internal cohesion, external peace, even after they achieve whatever their initial goals were. It's a tough lesson in nation building.
It then gets more specific, doesn't it? It targets what the author calls Anget nationalists with a very clear critique.
Right.
Now, for our listeners, Anget here, it refers to a sort of hardline, sometimes exclusionary form of Tigrayan nationalism, one that really emphasizes a separate Tigrayan identity and, sometimes defines it in opposition to others. The author's language is, well, it's pointed. And in the original text, there's even a little emoji, a smirk face right after that phrase. That really underscores their strong opinion, maybe even a bit of disdain for that specific approach.
Right, that little visual cue, even just hearing about it, it really hits home, doesn't it, the author's feeling? And it raises a big question, really, for anyone involved in building or sustaining a society. When does that strong focus on your group identity, when does it become counterproductive? Especially when it's mainly framed against another group. The source seems to be arguing that path, the one rooted in hatred or resentment, it ultimately leads to bad outcomes. Detrimental consequences, not the stability or prosperity it might claim to be aiming for. It asks us, can defining yourself only by what you're against ever truly lead you to what you're for?
That's a really powerful point about identity built on opposition. But the author doesn't stop there. They quickly pivot, and this is interesting. They start pointing fingers, saying internal forces, not just external ones, are to blame for this path. The source says, and I'm quoting here, "Your struggle was hijacked by the party you were holding on to, not by the EA." Now, EA here means Ethiopian and Amhara forces. What's the significance of blaming internal leadership like that?
Well, that's a critical shift, isn't it? If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source argues that this internal party in context implies the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, deliberately created hatred and enmity.
Deliberately created it.
That's the claim. And then, crucially, it alleges this animosity was then used to oppress the people. So it's not just presented as a strategic mistake. No.
It's a severe condemnation of both the motive behind the actions and the negative oppressive outcome for the population itself. It speaks to a kind of profound manipulation, where the forces maybe meant to liberate actually became a tool for control, turning the people's own struggle into a vehicle for party power.
wow.
And sadly, we've seen echoes of this dynamic in other historical movements where internal factions kind of seize an external struggle for their own benefit.
The source definitely doesn't pull any punches. It claims this party deceived the people of Tigray in the name of freedom from oppression, in the name of self-government, and in the name of referendum. I mean, that's a really strong indictment. Trust completely broken. What does that accusation suggest about how the author thinks leadership should work?
It suggests, I think, a profound disappointment in what they see as ethical and moral failures of leadership. When a party uses these noble ideals, freedom, self-determination, as a sort of cloak for what the author calls deception.
It just undermines the whole basis of democratic aspiration. It speaks to a belief that real leadership should prioritize the genuine well-being, the autonomy of the people, over consolidating its own power. This kind of alleged manipulation using grand promises, unfortunately, it has a long history in politics, doesn't it? Often leaves behind cynicism and betrayal.
And the alleged consequence is just as stark, isn't it? The source claims the party destroyed Tigrayans and taken power. That's not just politics. It's framed as actively harming the very people they claim to represent. It feels like a deep sense of betrayal, a human cost, way beyond just political games.
Absolutely. That phrase, destroyed Tigrayans, it suggests a devastation that goes beyond just, political defeat or losing an opportunity.
Right.
It points to a literal human and societal cost, implying that the struggle, rather than uplifting the people, ultimately consumed them. This kind of internal critique, it really highlights that tragic paradox, where a movement supposedly for liberation ends up causing immense suffering to the very people it pledged to serve. It forces us to confront the heavy price paid when leadership's actions diverge so dramatically from its stated goals.
The author then throws out this really challenging question, aimed directly at the reader, forcing some deep reflection. They ask, what has Tigray gained from leading the party for 30 years? Do you think she fought all her life to establish a country, to secure the interests of Tigray? What kind of reevaluation is that pushing for?
That question is a profound call for, historical introspection and accountability. It highlights this deep disappointment, this questioning of whether the long-term struggle supposedly for self-determination, for Tigray's security, whether it actually served the true broad interests of the Tigrayan people.
Or just the party's interests.
Or if it became a tool for something else entirely, yes. Perhaps the interests of a specific party or a faction within it. It forces us to ask, was all that sacrifice, those decades of fighting, was it truly worth the outcome? Or did it become a means to an end for just a select few? It's a critical perspective on the legacy of any long-standing political movement, really.
So after that intense critique of past choices, the author kind of shifts gears. They start painting this vivid picture of what might have been. It's a pretty stark counterfactual, asking us to imagine, what if this jealous Tigray party, as they call it, had not deceived the people and taken power? What then? And the claims they make are very specific, very impactful. The source boldly states that Tigray would have a 45% larger state, including the one allocated to Amhara and Afar. I mean, that's not a small adjustment.
No, not at all.
That's a significant territorial difference. It would have completely changed the region's geography, its economy, its politics, its a vision of expansion that was allegedly just sacrificed.
And the ripple effects of that, they would be enormous, going way beyond just land. The source estimates the population of Tigray would increase by approximately 50%.
Wow, 50%.
Yeah, along with a proportional surge in its economic potential. This isn't just hypothetical numbers. It suggests a vision of real prosperity, demographic growth, much greater regional power, all allegedly foregone. A direct, measurable cost they're attributing to the leadership's choices. It's a powerful argument about the long-term impact of these political decisions.
And beyond just the land and the numbers, the source really hits hard on the human cost of the path actually taken. It claims that in this alternative reality, there would be no lifelong enemy of the people of Tigray. The people would be free from the threat of war and worry. That speaks to such a deep desire for peace, for security, that was, from this perspective, denied. What does that tell us about people's ultimate hopes, maybe beyond politics?
It speaks to a longing for something much more fundamental than just territory or political wins, doesn't it? That deep yearning for peace, for safety, for a future where you're not constantly living under the shadow of conflict.
Yeah.
This imagined scenario, it highlights how the human cost of endless conflict, the constant threat, the psychological burden of worry often just dwarfs any perceived gains from taking an adversarial stance. It reminds us that for so many people, real liberation isn't just about self-rule, it's about the right to live without fear. That's a universal human desire, and it often gets lost in the noise of political struggle.
And the idea of having worked peacefully for 30 years, avoided confrontation with the Sheh, which, seems to mean broader Ethiopian or federal forces, that really underscores this path of missed opportunities. Stability, development, all possibly lost. It makes you think about the long shadow conflict casts. How incredibly hard must it be for societies to reconcile those deep grievances with the need for future stability?
Oh, it's an immense challenge, maybe one of the hardest things any society coming out of conflict faces. The source is essentially arguing, look, a path of cooperation, maybe integration, was available, and it would have led to vastly better outcomes, peace, prosperity, even territorial integrity. This what-if scenario forces a really painful reckoning. What was actually gained, and what did it cost? It highlights just how difficult it is to move past those historical hatreds when they've been woven so deeply into the national story. Especially when, as the author claims, that narrative was deliberately cultivated by the leadership.
Hmm.
The path to reconciliation, it often requires confronting these alternative histories, these roads not taken, and the choices that led away from them.
So moving from that powerful critique in the what if, the source then offers some direct advice, some counsel to the listener. It urges them to demand fight for your rights from EA while fulfilling your duty. It sounds like a call for a balanced approach, advocacy, and responsibility.
Yeah, it suggests a path of active engagement, but within the existing framework. It's about advocating for justice, for getting back what was robbed, as they put it.
Yeah.
But, and this is crucial, it emphasizes doing this peacefully.
Right, peaceful.
It outlines a strategy. Seek accountability, seek redress, but through nonviolent means. Don't perpetuate the cycles of conflict. It's a practical, though obviously very difficult way for communities to assert their rights and try to reclaim what they believe is theirs without causing more instability or more human suffering. It speaks to the idea that maybe true strength lies in principled, peaceful action, not endless fighting.
And there's a very clear warning wrapped up in that advice, too, reinforcing that initial idea. Don't create more enemies for the people of Tigray. Don't add to their suffering. It ties right back to the start about not building a state on hatred. It's like the argument comes full circle.
Exactly. It circles right back to that core argument. A foundation built on antagonism is ultimately self-destructive. This warning is really a plea to break those cycles of revenge and resentment, to recognize that continuing to cultivate enemies only deepens the suffering of your own people. It's a call for maybe strategic empathy, understanding that long-term security, long-term prosperity often depends on finding a way to coexist, even with historical adversaries, rather than constantly creating new ones.
The source finishes with this really powerful internal appeal. Don't spread ignorance. Don't look for solutions to your problems from outside. It emphasizes self-reliance, critical thinking. These seem crucial for the future they envision. What challenges and opportunities does that final piece of advice really highlight?
That is a powerful closing line. It urges self-sufficiency both in thought and in action. The warning not to spread ignorance, that's a call for intellectual honesty, isn't it? For critically examining the narratives you're given, especially ones that might keep conflict going or misdirect people, and don't look for solutions from outside. That's a profound declaration of agency, of self-determination. It emphasizes that the most lasting solutions often come from a community's own wisdom, its own dialogue, its own efforts, not relying on external interventions or ideologies. It's definitely a challenging path, requires a lot of introspection, internal reform, but it also holds the promise of a genuine, self-made peace.
That really was an insightful deep dive, wasn't it? Into a very specific, very critical perspective on Tigray's past choices and its potential future. We've explored how one strong viewpoint challenges identities built on enmity, critiques specific leadership for, well, alleged deception and huge missed opportunities, and ultimately calls for a peaceful, maybe more integrated way forward. It's not just about Tigray, though. It feels like a masterclass in how narratives really do shape destiny.
Absolutely. This discussion truly highlights the immense weight of those historical decisions and the different realities they can spawn. It really encourages us, I think, to look beyond the immediate conflicts to the long-term hopes of a people for peace, prosperity, self-determination, and the vital role that internal critique plays in even getting there.
So as you, our listener, reflect on this, what stands out to you about the power of these narratives in shaping a society's future? And how the choices made today can just echo down the generations? It leaves us with a really compelling question, I think. How do societies reconcile their past struggles, their deep grievances, with the absolute need for future stability and growth, especially when they face these profound calls for reevaluation from within their own communities? And maybe even more broadly, what does it really mean to build a truly sustainable future? Not just for your own people, but in coexistence with others around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep digging, keep